From the hills of Afghanistan, to the lobbies of Counter-Strike, to the most elite sniper teams on the planet, one British rifle completely rewrote the rulebook on what long-range accuracy could actually mean. The terror of gaming lobbies worldwide, the assassin's weapon of choice in 100 films, and the gun behind the single most astonishing confirmed kill in the entire history of warfare. Today, the story of how a handful of shooters working out of what was basically a garden shed beat every major arms manufacturer on Earth, redefined sniper rifle design from the ground up, and handed the British Army a weapon so good that the world's finest militaries came running. This is the story of Accuracy International and the Arctic Warfare Magnum. By the early 1980s, Britain had a sniper problem. A serious one. The L-42A1 was the rifle being handed to British snipers, and on paper it sounds reasonable enough. Bolt action, chambered in 7.62 NATO, scoped, accurate to a point. But here's the thing, the L-42A1 was essentially a modernised Lee Enfield, a rifle whose fundamental design, DNA, stretched back before the First World War. Let that sink in for a moment. British snipers in the 1980s were being sent out on some of the most demanding and dangerous tasks on any battlefield carrying a rifle that their own great-grandfathers could conceivably have recognised. Reliable, yes. Accurate enough for its era, sure, but ancient. The Falklands in 1982 ripped the problem wide open. Against a modern enemy in brutal terrain, British snipers found the L-42A1 just wasn't cutting it anymore. The Ministry of Defence launched a formal competition. The prize was a contract for over 1,200 rifles plus spares, enough to finally pension off the old Enfield for good. Enter Accuracy International, founded in 1978 by just a handful of people. The headline name was Malcolm Cooper, a British Olympic shooting gold medalist. Working alongside him were gunsmiths and designers Dave Walls and David Keeg. And when people say they were building rifles by hand in a small workshop, that's not a figure of speech. Their facility was genuinely, by any reasonable measure, a shed. This was a company so small and so unknown in the world of military contracts that when the MOD tender opened, they didn't even enter expecting to win. They entered to get feedback on their design. That's it. Their entry was the PM, the Precision Marksman. And the key to understanding why it was so different comes down to where the design philosophy originated. Cooper was a world-class target shooter, so the PM wasn't designed the way virtually every military sniper rifle up to that point had been designed, which meant taking an existing military action, bedding it into a wooden or fiberglass stock, and calling it a sniper rifle. The PM was designed like a target rifle from scratch, built up to a standard by people who had actually stood on Olympic podiums. The difference in approach was night and day, and it showed in the result. The revolutionary idea at the heart of the PM was the chassis. Every other sniper rifle of the era worked essentially the same way. You took an action and bedded it into a stock, either wood or fiberglass, which required a skilled gunsmith to hand-fit each individual rifle. And even when done beautifully, that bedding could shift. Heat, cold, moisture, a few solid knocks in the field, two supposedly identical rifles could shoot completely differently, and the same rifle could quietly lose its zero without the shooter ever knowing. For a sniper operating at distance where the margin between a hit and a miss can be measured in fractions of a millimetre at the muzzle, that's completely unacceptable. Accuracy International did something nobody else was doing. They built the PM around a full-length aluminium chassis, a rigid metal spine running the entire length of the weapon with the action bolted solidly to it. The polymer stock panels on either side aren't structural at all, they're covers. Basically cosmetic. The barrel was free-floated, not touching the stock anywhere, and the result was a rifle that held its zero through abuse, through temperature swings, through the kind of punishment that field service actually delivers. Parts could be swapped between rifles without starting the bedding process from scratch. It behaved like a precision tool rather than a temperamental piece of craftsmanship that needed nursing along by a specialist. There were other clever touches throughout the design. The thumbhole stock forced the shooter into a fundamentally correct firing position every single time, which sounds like a small thing until you're lying in the mud at 2 in the morning trying to acquire a target quickly. Adjustable sections meant the rifle could be fitted to virtually any user without compromising the shooting position. And the iconic ball-ended cocking handle, large, unmistakable, easy to operate with gloves or under stress, became one of the most recognizable features of any sniper rifle in history. The whole package was thought through by people who actually shot competitively, and it showed in every single detail. In 1985, the British Army formally adopted the PM as the L96A1, quickly nicknamed the Green Meanie for reasons that should be fairly obvious given the colour. It fired 7.62 NATO rounds from a 10-round magazine, used Schmidt and Bender optics from Germany, and the complete package came to over 6.5 kilograms. That's quite a lot for a 7.62 rifle. But as any serious target shooter will tell you, a heavier rifle is an easier rifle to hold steady, particularly when shooting from a rest or a bipod at distance. And the numbers backed it up. A noticeably higher percentage of soldiers were passing sniper selection and training once the L96A1 replaced the old Enfield. Better kit meant troops could focus energy on the skills that actually make a sniper dangerous: camouflage, concealment, fieldcraft, stalking, observation. The rifle stopped being the limiting factor. It was a genuine step forward for British sniper capability, and the MOD knew it. Except it nearly fell apart almost immediately, and the reason is almost comically mundane given how close it came to disaster. AI had won the contract. Except they were still fundamentally a shed operation. Mass producing over 1,200 rifles was far beyond their capacity, so production had to be subcontracted to an outside manufacturer, which meant handing over control of some of the finer points of their design to people who hadn't designed it. And the trouble came with one of the smallest but most critical components of any firearm: the firing pin. AI had specified a particular grade of steel. The subcontractor used something else. The result was firing pins that would snap, cleanly, invisibly, deep inside the bolt. And because of how the design worked, a broken firing pin didn't sit safely away from the primer of the next round. It protruded directly into it, which meant that as a soldier cycled the bolt to chamber a fresh round with absolutely no indication anything was wrong, he was essentially slam-firing the rifle before the bolt was anywhere near fully locked. The rifle could grenade in his hands. That's how grave the situation was. They were willing to return to the museum piece they'd just retired rather than risk injuring their own troops with the replacement. The fixes were a redesigned firing pin that would protrude slightly from the rear of the bolt when broken, making it visible on inspection, combined with tougher bolt locking rings. Rifles that received the upgrades got a C suffix in the serial number. Thankfully, the military accepted the fixes, and the legend didn't die in 1986 before it had properly started. All of that near catastrophe from a subcontractor cutting a corner on something as small as a firing pin. Then came the Swedish requirement, and this is where the family really started to grow. In the mid-1980s, the Swedish Armed Forces went looking for a new sniper rifle with one very particular, very brutal specification. It had to keep functioning in Nordic cold down to -40 degrees. Either way, it's the kind of cold that turns reliable equipment into expensive dead weight. Mechanisms freeze. Plastics that seem perfectly robust become brittle and crack. A standard rifle in those conditions can simply cease to function, and a sniper rifle that won't work is worse than useless. Accuracy International took the L96 and re-engineered it to survive that environment. What changed? Tougher polymer replaced the stock materials. The bolt was modified to resist icing up and seizing solid. A 3-position safety was added. And critically, the trigger guard, the stock thumb hole, and the magazine tabs were all enlarged so that a soldier wearing thick Arctic mittens could actually operate the weapon without taking them off in conditions where exposed skin can suffer frostbite in minutes. Astonishingly, the aluminium chassis carried straight over, completely untouched. It was already that good. The upgraded rifle got the name that would define the entire family from that point forward: Arctic Warfare. Sweden adopted it between 1988 and 1991 as the PSG-90. That contract put a company that started in a shed firmly on the world stage. Britain liked what the AW offered over the original L96 and adopted the improved version as the L118A1, primarily for special forces and counter-terrorism roles. And then the floodgates opened. The Arctic warfare spread across the globe at a pace that even AI probably hadn't expected. The Americans ran their version as the Mark 13. Germany took the Magnum variant as the G22. Dozens of military and law enforcement organizations worldwide, all drawn to the same chassis, the same philosophy, the same fundamental idea that had come out of that shed in Portsmouth. The Arctic Warfare family started expanding. There are some genuinely brilliant variants. The AWP, Arctic Warfare Police, shorter and stiffer barreled, optimized for law enforcement work, and the only AW variant that comes in black finish rather than the standard green. Then the suppressed versions, the AWS and AWC, with integral suppressors for subsonic 308. Quiet enough to change the engagement calculus entirely. The covert version, proper spy thriller territory, could be broken down small enough to be transported in a suitcase. And stepping the power up considerably, the AW50, chambered in 50 BMG, adopted by Britain and Australia around 2000, built for anti-material work rather than traditional sniping. And then there's the pick of the bunch, the AWM Arctic Warfare Magnum. Scaled up significantly for either 300 Winchester Magnum or the now legendary 338 Lapua Magnum cartridge. Longer action, 5-round magazine, fluted barrel on the British variants, and range figures that make the old 7.62 NATO loadout look modest. The 338 Lapua Magnum is a remarkable cartridge. It reaches significantly further than 7.62 NATO, delivers substantially more energy at distance, but doesn't demand the massive, heavy, almost unwieldy platform that a 50 caliber rifle requires. It occupies an almost perfect middle ground, still completely lethal, well past a mile, and then some. British Special Forces got their hands on small numbers of the 338 AWM, adopted as the L115A1, later the L115A2, with a folding stock and AI bipod. Then came the SSIP, the Sniper System Improvement Program, which produced the L115A3 long-range rifle, first fielded by 16 Air Assault Brigade in Helmand Province in 2008. The upgrades read almost exactly like a sniper's wish list. Folding stock, adjustable cheek rest, a Schmidt and Bender 5 to 25 power day scope fitted with a P4 range-finding reticle, and an enhanced suppressor designed to reduce both flash and noise signature substantially. The whole package represented the most capable sniper system Britain had ever fielded. And in November 2009, it got put to the most extreme test imaginable. Helmand Province, Afghanistan. That engagement beat the previous world record held by Canadian sniper Rob Furlong from 2002 by 45 metres. Harrison found out he'd broken the record later, at his medal parade. He hadn't known during the engagement. But here's where it's important to be straight about something. Harrison paid a price for that shot, and for everything that came before and after it. PTSD, leading to medical discharge in 2014. The Ministry of Defence leaked his identity publicly, putting him at genuine risk of kidnapping, and subsequently paid him £100,000 in compensation. He's spoken openly about what it cost him in his book, The Longest Kill, which is genuinely worth reading if any of this interests you. The record stood until 2017, when a Canadian Special Forces sniper using a Macmillan TAC-50 finally surpassed it. But for 8 years, the longest confirmed kill in the history of warfare belonged to a British rifle built by a company that had started in a garden shed. The Arctic Warfare conquered screens almost as thoroughly as it conquered battlefields, and it did it under a name that's confused gun enthusiasts for over 2 decades. In 1999, Counter-Strike launched. You might have heard of it. The in-game weapon was called the AWP, standing for Arctic Warfare Police, except it was modelled almost entirely on the AWM, the Arctic Warfare Magnum. So an entire generation of players grew up knowing the most iconic sniper rifle in gaming history by the wrong name entirely. In the game, it was one shot, one kill to almost anywhere on the body. Beloved and absolutely despised in equal measure, depending entirely on which side of the scope you happen to be on. Valve loved it enough to carry it into every follow-up title, which means the AWM, wearing the AWP, has probably been fired virtually by more people than any other sniper rifle in history. And then it spread further. The Battlefield series ran it across multiple titles, often labelling it the L96, while actually modelling the AWM, until later entries finally gave it the correct L115 designation. Call of Duty Modern Warfare put it in millions of hands. PUBG, the game that essentially created the battle royale genre as we know it today, made it one of the most coveted drops in the entire game. Resident Evil Apocalypse handed one to a rooftop sniper character holding back the undead. The point is that the Arctic Warfare family is woven so deeply into the fabric of gaming and film that most people who've never held a real firearm in their lives could pick one out of a lineup. In 2005, astonishingly, Accuracy International faced liquidation. The company that had beaten SIG and HK and Remington and Parker Hale, that had armed the SAS and the Swedish military and dozens of others, that had produced the rifle behind the longest confirmed kill in history, very nearly went under. It was rescued by a British consortium led by Tom Irwin, alongside the original designers Walls and Kaig. Today, the company sells worldwide and builds cutting-edge multi-caliber platforms including the AX and the AX-ELR. You can even buy an Accuracy International chassis system and drop your own Remington 700 action into it without needing a gunsmith and without spending what a complete AI rifle costs. The philosophy is still the same: rigid chassis, free-floated barrel, built to a standard rather than a price. What's remarkable, looking at the whole arc of it, is how a design philosophy cooked up by competitive shooters in a workshop that most people would be embarrassed to store garden equipment in, managed to outthink every established manufacturer of military firearms on the planet. The aluminium chassis system that every other company dismissed or simply hadn't considered is now the dominant approach across the entire precision rifle industry. You can find chassis-based designs from almost every manufacturer that produces a serious precision rifle today. AI didn't just win a contract, they changed the direction the entire industry moved in, and they nearly didn't even enter the competition in the first place. The L115A3 remains in British service. The Arctic Warfare Magnum is still chambering .338 Lapua, still reaching out past ranges that would have seemed almost fictional to the snipers handed L42A1s in the early 1980s.